nation.
Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore, Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. And the title of this show is From Public Schooling to Community Education. And we will be doing that more than just talking about it, because we have talked a lot about a lot of things. But it is time that we do some of the things that we talk about, that we become an example of what we must practice, what we preach, I suppose, is the way to summarize that. And my guest is Olasupo, Dr. Olasupo Laosebikan. I love that name. I always loved to say your name from the first time I heard it, because it gave me, it's like music.
Yeah.
You know, and when you speak English all the time, you get so used to the staccato chopping off of syllables, and then when you get to say a name that has slides, you know, that the syllables just flow together like a wave, like music. It's such a wonderful thing. It's a good feeling. So I'm very happy to greet you.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm very well. What you said about my name, the Yoruba language is very tonal. So if you take my first name, Olasupo, it's like Remi Dodo. This is why the talking drum beats it so easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel the music in your name.
Yeah.
I gave my daughter a Yoruba name. I named her Ayoka, and it meant she brings joy to all. And sometimes I said it may be modified to mean she brings joy to some, because right now you're not bringing me any joy. But I wanted to pick up from a previous show before as we go forward. And Dr. Harold Pates did say that we have been de-ancestralized through this process of transforming us from captives into slaves, and I put that in quotes. And I want you to talk as much as you like about the importance of reverence for one's ancestors.
Well,
Care,
you know,
and sacred relationship with one's ancestors.
it's also the same relationship with history, with so-called past. You know, our relationship to history too. We have the idea that once the past is gone, that it has disappeared. And this keeps us reinventing the wheel, if you like, because, you know, nothing is past. It's a cycle of life.
So we have to start all over from the beginning.
Yes, instead of learning from
we don't learn from what has preceded.
We don't learn from what has gone by. And I think all of this is explained by the fact that the heart of our education is very, very, very mechanical. It's based on, if you like, I would like to suggest that it's a machine that is operating things. So its conception of reality is always what is available, what is present, what we can touch, so we forget our ancestors, who are also very present in us,
with
by
the
the way.
senses.
Yeah.
What you can see, smell, hear, touch, and so on. This is what exists.
That's it. And if you cannot
see it, if it is not visible, it does not exist.
It doesn't exist.
So that's a different reality, isn't it?
It is very, very different. And it's very seductive, because you can look at the machine. It has accomplished so much. The machine, you could go to the moon and have dinner. You could go to Africa in a minute, and you know, so it's very hard to see that it has this other deleterious effect, this dehumanization. It's very, very hard to see it. So one is caught up in the machine. We are not born yesterday. Africans have been here for a long time. So how did it happen that we now find ourselves in schools that doesn't talk about things that we cannot see? Well, it's only because part of it is that we've been, you know, the machine is so effective in what it is very good at. But the unfortunate thing is that to carry the conversation a little further, is that what the machine does, what school does, is that it trains parts, or if you like, it manufactures parts.
Okay.
Much like at the factory in Detroit, you have somebody making the gear, somebody making the steering. You have people in education. You have somebody making the making of the surgeon, the making of the psychologist. These are narrow experts.
Okay, the subjects.
Yeah,
okay, the curriculum.
Yes.
Okay, so there's somebody who specializes in this part of the curriculum and that part of the curriculum, and who knows the whole curriculum?
There's nobody.
Nobody
There's
knows
always somebody
the whole
with a part.
curriculum.
For example, before we started the show, I was just saying something about a good surgeon. We think a good surgeon is removing bullets from from people shot, brought to Cook County Hospital on the weekend. He's very good. He or she is very good at it. But you can see that that is a machine. If that person is not worrying about why people get shot in the first place. But we have a system that just is very interested in specialists in producing parts, special parts for special purposes.
Right.
The only
and special people to manage those parts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. The only problem is that we're human beings.
Right.
We have human
don't
society.
Fit that.
We cannot play that. One of the reasons, perhaps, I mean, to even cite another example, that we have a lot of concern about violence, for example. But one of the reasons why we can't do much with it is because we're assessing it again in numbers. Whereas one violent crime can upset an entire city. So when you are really going at it in numbers again, you are really looking at it very mechanically. You are thinking it's the problem of the police to solve. You are not really looking at it as a problem of everybody. Even the people in charge, the mayor and the
governor,
the people who make the laws, they have to worry that they are not creating atmospheres that inspire the kind of violence we don't want. But that doesn't happen because we think violence is only something that the gangbanger does. But one can have violent policies that violate other people.
Violate and violence are they're part and parcel of the same word.
Exactly. But when we specialize violence as something belonging to the gangbanger only, we forget that there are policies that are violent, that violate other people. So that now violence now becomes, if we want peace, it becomes everybody's concern. Not a concern for the police, not Superintendent McCarthy's only, but everybody's.
Notice how when they give you the statistics, they say, if they tell you that somebody was shot, he was a known gang member. You know, it was a gang-related crime. Now, someone is shot on the street, and this person was anonymous to you until you entered the scene and found this person shot dead on the street. How do you know this person? What do you know of this person? How do you know that this person is a gang member? And if this person is a gang member, does that mean that this crime could have been anticipated? And if it could have been anticipated, then was law enforcement able to serve and protect this crime from having been carried out? Since you know the gang members, obviously you know who they are, and you also know whether or not they are in possession of weapons, because the gang members don't make them. They have to get them from somewhere. And so the community is under surveillance. You can find people, going through red lights and yellow lights, and in school zones going 5 miles over the speed limit. You can see everything that goes on in the community, but you cannot see the major crimes that are going on, and you cannot see the violations. And I'd love for you to make that distinction. The violations of the rights of citizens that go on a regular basis.
Well, again, you have a cubicle. You forget that the person who has been shot has a mother they're not just gangbangers. They have people that love them.
There's somebody's son.
Somebody's son is a human being like you. So these little cubicles that we can put people into allows us to treat them, again,
like
mechanically.
Parts.
Yes, like parts. That is a bad part, so we remove that. We bring another part. That's part of the real problem. But again, I want to emphasize that where all of us can do less violence in the world, including the governor, including myself, yourself, because sometimes what we say may be violent. The policies and the things we do may violate other people or be violent. And you may create by unjust laws the kind of environment in which violent crime festers. And so if we want to have peace, then it is everybody's concern. A good example is to think of if the arteries are narrowing, the heart beats faster. It doesn't point to the arteries and say something is wrong here. If something is not right about the city, then we all have to work together to make it so. But we are worshiping a very mechanical model of reality, and this is the real challenge for us. You know?
And so when we operate on a spiritual model of reality, then we understand unseen. Then we understand those things that are not seen. And we understand then that the ancestors, though that they are not seen, are part of the community. They remain a part of the community. When we say past, we don't mean P-A-S-T, we mean P-A-S-S-E-D, meaning that they passed into another form. But that not that they have left the community, because we have their DNA. Their genes are our genes. Their blood is our blood. We are made of them. It is impossible for them not to live if we are living and breathing and exchanging as we are right now. My mother, my father, your mother, your father, and all of your ancestors are living on through you.
Yes.
And consequently, you have an obligation. What is the obligation that we have to our ancestors besides guarding our speech so that we are not violating someone by virtue of our ability to express ourselves?
Well, I think that, okay, that makes us, how many years old are we then? If you and I will be 1 million years old? If you are that, if one is that old, then one has to really get wise, and the only way to get wise is to remember all the people that have been here. It's such a waste. This is the real problem. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing. How to deal with your wife or husband. All this has been going on for a long time. And it's a denial of the depth of human experience, not to understand what has happened. Because what happened yesterday is happening today. If you say slavery is over with, well, what about when you pay people slave wages? So you don't end slavery. You have slavery in a different form.
Right.
It has only reformulated itself. And so there's nothing new. So there's a lot for us to learn from the past. You know, my brother, who lives in Nigeria now, wanted to celebrate what we call the Egungun Festival. Yorubas have a festival once a year where they create an environment that is very welcoming to the ancestors. It's like a street festival.
Okay.
You know? There is an Egungun, which is somebody in a mask, believed to represent the spirit of the ancestors. And people sometimes, when they are in mask, will get inspired in some way. They will get in touch with a realm of reality that is not easily available to all people. But the atmosphere is completely charged with with a welcoming of the spirits of our ancestors. People get possessed. You can think of it as an exaggerated version, or a more of a the churches. What is that? One of the churches that we have.
The Pentecostal.
Yes,
Okay.
It has that kind of spirit, but it's
Okay.
the spirit of the ancestors now that are very, very present. One of the things we had to overcome in my brother trying to create this, the festival was, I'm sorry, let me just take it. Every Yoruba family has an egungun. In other words,
A spiritual
a
guide.
spiritual guide that they bring out once a year so that they can remember all the ancestors. But with the coming of Christianity, the Christians began to, the missionaries, and when we get religion, we sometimes get it in the extreme.
Right.
So they
so they begin to eliminate.
to eliminate and to talk about this being. So one of the problems we had again was to deal with people who have gone to school like you and I, because they've been educated in those schools to regard those things as superstition, as unscientific. So it's a big challenge all over the world. What is very interesting, though, is to find that people in the West will go to watch the carnival in Brazil. They will go to, they understand the Mexican Day of the Dead. But our people have a very hard time understanding and accepting a tradition which has been part of us for forever.
That's unfortunate, because those kinds of things need not only to be celebrated, but they need to be understood. Now people go to New Orleans every year for the Mardi Gras, and most of the time, it seems to me, they turn it into something vulgar. It's a time for overindulgence, for too much wine, too much revelry, which is the other extreme. But to have a means by which you honor, because in the Christian Bible it says, honor thy mother and their father. But if we pluralize that and say, honor thy mothers and their fathers, that would be the African way.
Yeah.
Because the African family, give me the Nigerian family model. I learned from one of my colleagues, Elkin Satole, about the Zulu family model. Is the Nigerian family model, how are, let's say, the sisters, your sisters, are they aunts to your children?
Yeah, they are mothers.
They are mothers.
Yeah,
that's what I want you to
they're
say.
Mothers.
Your sisters are mothers to
mothers,
your children,
yeah,
not
mothers.
aunts.
What an insult to call them aunts.
Right, right.
They will be very offended if somebody
Right.
called
Your wife's sisters.
Yes.
They are also mothers.
They're mothers.
Right.
They're mothers.
So the African family model is a human family model, because it acknowledges that one has more than a single biological mother.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And what a gift to have so many mothers.
And you have so many fathers in the same way. Your brothers are your children's fathers.
You have many fathers.
Right. And so you have all of these mothers and all of these fathers.
Yes.
Therefore, you have all of these grandmothers and grandfathers.
Yes.
How could you become an orphan?
It's impossible.
It's impossible to be an orphan,
impossible.
because if your biological mother dies, you still have all these other mothers.
Definitely.
If your biological father passes, you have all these other fathers.
Yes.
Then brothers and sisters. Since all of these brothers of your father and sisters of your father and sisters of your mother are your mothers, then their children are your sisters and brothers.
Yes.
So you can never be an only child.
No, never.
You always have brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And then if you have no children at all, if your brother has children, you have children.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And you will even take people will take one of their own children. If your brother has none and your brother's wife is pining after giving birth, a sister might just say, why don't you be the mother
Right.
of this child of mine. So
Right.
that child has two homes, two places.
Right.
And, you know,
Right. That is a human model.
Exactly.
That is a model that is all inclusive.
Exactly.
Then do you also have members of your age grade, those with whom you were initiated?
We don't have, I mean, I didn't go through anything
You didn't go
like
through
that. Yes,
initiation.
no,
But if
yeah.
you went through initiation, would the people who were initiated with you, would they be close to you,
Yes,
like family?
well, yeah, there's still, although I didn't go through a formal initiation, there are people that I grew up with who I went to school with and had some kind of traditional experiences with, who are still like my brothers till
Right.
today.
So brothers don't always have to be brothers by blood.
They don't have to be at
That's
all.
the point I'm making.
Yes.
I'm talking here, we're talking about the African family model.
Yes.
And the African family model is not one mother, one father living in one house with their biological children. And it's not they used to use a term and probably still do call extended family.
Yes.
It's not an extended family. There are no extensions. There are no add-ons. These people they were already in the family. They were already mothers. They were already fathers. They were already sisters and brothers. And so this isn't extended outside
it's not extended.
outside of the normal model. This is the model.
This is it.
Okay.
There is a, you know, you said something now about the idea of an extended family. I mean, the misnomer of an extended
Thank you,
family.
misnomer.
But it's also the same. I don't know if you know Dio Laoye.
Yes, I do. He's the artist.
We were having a discussion at a conference that he organized, and we were talking about, people made references to traditional African art. You check that word out, traditional. It's as if it is ossified, it doesn't change.
Right.
And these are terms that Europeans found useful to label African art with. Because that art, of course, is also changing.
Right.
What is invasive is the one that was brought by the European, the kind of art that they brought, which is now called modern.
Right.
And the challenge of the traditional is to domesticate the modern, the so-called modern. You know, in other words, it should traditionalize the modern. That is the only way it can now be palatable, of service to Africa.
Right.
So where all these languages, all these terms, because again, maybe we are back to education again, nothing is more important than the idea. Whatever you have, no better dictator exists than the idea that one has in one's mind. And therefore, you always have to be questioning the ideas.
Exactly. You have to always check in your mind, what do you mean when this is said? What do they mean when they say this?
Exactly.
Earlier, my guest talked about the designation minorities. You know, it's such an absurd term when you think of it in any way. For example, the example he made was there's no land from which minorities come. So you can't have a people who have no origin, they have no place. But the other part of it is, how do you make a minority out of people who are the majority of the world's population? The people of color, Africans and others who don't identify themselves as Africans but are people of color just the same. 9 out of 10 people of the world's population are people of color. How then do you become a part of a minority if you're a part of the 90 out of 100 people that are on the planet that are people of color? It's impossible. You cannot be a minority. And further, you cannot be a minority because you're an African. You know, you're an African, and Africans, there's no country in Africa called minority. There are no places in Africa no towns, no villages, no countries that are called minorities. So you could not have come from minority, and therefore, and since you are part of the larger number, if it's the numerical, if it's quantitative, then you're a part of the larger quantity.
Oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
But that demeans us.
Yes, it does.
It demeans us to say that we have these amputated families. That you only have one mother. How deprived are you?
That is very deprived.
You have only one mother. You have only one father. And may I ask if it is possible for for mother not to be a gender-based term in Nigeria? Among the Zulus, it is not gender-based. They have female fathers and male mothers, which means that the brother of, the mother's brother is a male mother among the Zulus. His function, and that has nothing to do with sex. His function is that kind. It's the father's brothers who have the father function, which is to engender the kinship group values and discipline into the children. But the mother's function is primarily to nurture,
That's very interesting.
So, but the thing is, the term mother is broadly applied so that you have a sense of being a part of a whole that is greater than the nuclear family.
Oh, definitely, definitely, definitely. There is we are very individualistic in the West, and so we think that it's as if the individual just magically dropped from out of nowhere. Like the individual has no mother and father. Those mothers and father don't have mothers and father, which will confirm that the individual is a continuation of a process that began from the creator, if you like, and that the individual also represents that mystery, which is the creator also, that we have creative energies within us, that everybody around us is like that too, and that they are our life like us, they are our relations, they are part of our body, if you like, if you think of the human body.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that to me, to use the body as the model, so that the eyes are not seen as having less value than the kidneys, or the heart having greater value than the brain. The understanding that it takes all of these things working together and hopefully working well for the human being to function as a human being. And one would not trade one's liver, for a kidney or an eye for an ear. One is not even able to conceive of how you would do that, because it's a single organism.
Yes,
so are we
it
talking
is.
that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's one body, it's one destiny. If something is happening to you and I don't feel it, that means I am dead. If I can do violent things to you, that shows that I am not alive. Because once I am conscious and I know that the same life that beats in you beats in me, it's very hard for me to do certain things to you, because that will hurt me. And on the other hand, I am not a saint if the air is polluted and I clean it. It's just reasonable that I should do that, because it belongs to all of us. I will breathe it, you will breathe it. So we co-create, reality, and we have to take it very seriously, and we have to be responsible for it.
And we do not pollute the water we all have to drink.
Yeah, we have to drink.
We do not pollute the air we all have to breathe. We do not pollute the land we all have to, get our nutrition, our nutrients from things that grow from the land. So we see ourselves as part of a whole that is greater than ourselves.
Exactly. And we're destroying the world only because we are very instrumental. Our view of the world is just using whatever we need.
Right.
Whereas anybody that is abusive of the ground on which we stand,
Right.
that is somebody trying to commit suicide, trying to
Right.
kill us all,
Right.
trying to. The Yorubas have a lot of references to the ground, the ground of being. You have to be careful not to dishonor the ground, because the ground upon which we stand is a spirit itself. It too is alive, and we have to honor that.
How will we not recognize that it's alive when we see things growing from it? Nothing grows from something that is dead until the dead thing begins to dematerialize and then turn into ground from which new things can grow.
Yeah, well, we're back to that discussion about the machine at the heart of things.
Okay.
Because the machine does not acknowledge mystery. And the first step, I think, in wisdom is to understand the mystery at the heart of existence. We might call it by different names, but there is a mystery. What unfortunately happens is that when somebody says it's God, another person says it's Allah, they start fighting over who has a different,
name.
What name is the better name, who has the better revelation. But what the African perspective is an acceptance of that mystery at the heart of existence. And this allows us to be very spiritual, to understand the miracle. You throw something on the ground and it's growing. Well, you didn't do anything. It's not because you're. But if you are only concerned with measuring how fast tomato grows,
Right.
which
Right.
which is science, which is
Right.
quantifiable, then you are dismissive completely of the
Right.
mystery of it all.
So if you can't measure it by some means, it does not exist.
It doesn't.
And if it doesn't exist, of course, it has no value.
And you're not teaching that in your school. Your schools are producing parts specialists
Right.
who will go out and do things, not people who are interested in the human experience that we share together. They are interested in the accountant who will just add money, not worrying where the money is coming from. So we have a society completely based on this manufacturing of parts and specialists.
And a machine.
Yes, completely. And
Well, I think it is unfair to ask the school to do what it is not designed or equipped to do. The school develops the cognitive aspect of the human being, which is one aspect. The affective aspect, the Africans have heart mind, not. Your mind is not making decisions without your heart being involved. Your heart is not making decisions without your mind being involved. So the affective and the cognitive, the brain and the heart must work together.
Exactly.
In order for you to be a whole human being. But if the school is designed and equipped, and people who work in the school are trained to address only the cognitive aspect of the machine, then this other part is left unattended.
Yes.
It will develop, but it will not be cultivated. The culture that it needs to help it to develop along human lines will be absent. And so it will be somewhat like weeds because it isn't being cultivated with the culture. So it would be like weeds in a vacant lot, just growing voluntarily, haphazardly, with no particular purpose, with no particular quality. It won't be, let's say, a medicine. It won't be a flower necessarily. it will just be something that grew. You can't have a community who may be articulate, who may be, quote, intelligent, read, write, compute, use machines, have technology and all of this, but have no development of the part that you say, I can't harm you because when I harm you, I harm myself.
Yes.
If that is not being developed, it'll develop in some haphazard way. It will develop, but it will not be a guided development. It will not be a development in the direction that it should go, and in the direction where it will be of service to itself or to others. And that's where home comes in.
Yes.
Because the school is not designed to do that. There's no profit in making human beings.
Yes. Oh, I see. Yes.
There's profit in making technocrats.
Yes, yes, yes.
Parts that fit in the machine. Parts
Yes.
that can serve a particular function. But of course, this economy is based on planned obsolescence. So parts wear out.
Yes, you throw it away.
So you throw the parts
Get
away
another
and
one.
you get new parts. And
Yeah.
when the parts are new, you praise the new parts. And then when they begin to slow down or not work well, then you toss them and you get more new parts. Are we not weary of going through this cycle?
I think we are lured or fixated on the machine. We are possessed by that way of seeing the world. You take, for example, you have, we have communities on the south side and the west side where there's a lot of crime, but school is completely shielded. I mean, even the buildings don't want to let the community in. The buildings are fortresses that don't allow the wind of the community to waft through it, so that they can, the school can begin to reflect the atmosphere in which they exist, because they are, if you like, temples to the machine.
Yes.
That's what they do. And in temples, you have rituals. 8 a.m. is arithmetic, 10 a.m. is those rituals, just like the rituals you have in any temple. So you have the same thing in school. So it cannot ever admit whatever is going on outside, because it is just like a temple. It's a string of rituals. So it doesn't really admit, it's not aware of its environment, because it's a closed in system. It feeds on itself. We read the Bible, it just, then comes the sermon.
We take the collection.
Yeah, you take the collection. The same thing in school. Physics in Hall K. This one in, it's just a string of things. When I was in Nigeria, this is when I was teaching at universities in Nigeria, this is what first struck me, that the president could just have been shot and the radio playing military music. And in Psychology 101, we will still be talking about what Freud did yesterday. It's an amazing thing.
It's as though it is not going on.
It's completely mechanical.
It's not part of your reality.
Not, the same thing you have here. You have environments where children are afraid to go to school. The children are getting shot on their way to school. But you don't have that as part of the curriculum. You don't have an active engagement with that issue. You still expect your children to come to school, and at 8 a.m. they should be ready for arithmetic.
Right.
Never mind that they've not eaten.
Right.
They
They're
just saw
not
somebody
living
shot.
they're not living in an environment.
Exactly. They're
robots.
They are because that's just the way that system, the mechanics, the machine functions. It just functions like that. It is not looking at the human beings. When kids fail out of school, when they flunk out, school is not worrying about them anymore because they are gone. That's just it.
Right.
You are out of here.
Right.
Because the school is not able to feel, because it is not a human model, so it cannot say.
There was a time that I know about when I was in school when you loved your teachers, and your teachers loved you. You knew where they lived because they didn't live far from where you lived. And sometimes some of your teachers would take you with permission to places that you should see, you know, and know about, and participate in various things. But the thing was that you had the sense that they cared about you. They knew when your mother had a new baby. They knew when there was death in the family. So I grew up with that sort of thing because my teachers were not employees. They were part of the community who worked as teachers, but yet they were part of the community. Now it appears to me that you have a great number of salaried employees.
Yeah.
They are mechanics.
Exactly.
They come to the shop to do their job. They report to their place on the floor of the plant. And they work on the part that they have been trained to work on. And when the bell rings,
Bye-bye.
they take off their hard hat and their protective gear, and they march out the door, and they go someplace else and do something else. Thus, there's no caring.
No, not at all.
The children do not feel the caring because the caring is absent.
No, it's very absent.
And if someone in your family dies, you don't expect to see the teacher, except in black neighborhoods. More than likely, the teacher will be there.
Show up, yes.
You know, but the thing is, you go to church, you see those people in your church if they are part of the religion that you practice. So they're part. You might see them in the supermarket. You know, you may see them in various places in your community. The teachers flee the community.
Yes. Isn't that something? They flee and they leave the children right there.
Right.
So it takes a teacher who looks at those. You have to feel. You have to now get beyond the machine in order to feel those pupils. If you do, you may then join organizations that are about justice. But so long as you are not feeling them, you are just you are fixing something, and as you said, then you leave. Then you just come back the next day and continue doing what you're doing. So how to humanize?
Humanize.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'd rather work where I'd rather meet the work where the work is. In other words, in your own home, there is some work to do. In your family, there is some work to do. You can, there are some people who do homeschooling. In fact, not a lot of talk is done about it in some communities, but that's a big thing. Homeschooling is a big thing. Some people have decided that their children are not being educated, or they're not getting what they think their children should have. So they have taken it upon themselves to do that. Now, not everybody thinks that they can take on the reading, the writing, the arithmetic, and all the subject matter. Not everybody feels capable of doing that. Sometimes families join together and they share the responsibility. Sometimes families join together and they hire somebody to come and teach particular parts of the machine that the children need to learn in order to pass the tests and so forth. There are all kinds of ways to get the schooling taken care of. But the important thing is the community must control the education of their
Yes.
children.
Yes.
They
Yes.
may not control the schooling, but the children are born in your household.
Yes, yes. You have to, there are many cost and control issues in education. How much does it cost? Who is the principal? But what is very important is that the curricula should reflect the community and its challenges.
Right.
If you have a lot of, like you say in Africa, that people say there's a lot of corruption, then the school should be, you should have anti-corruption or understanding corruption 101, 102. If you have a lot of violence, you should have, that should be reflected in your curriculum. But what you have now is a domineering curriculum that comes from outside and is imposed on the community. Yes, it's good to have homeschooling, but the community have to take hold of the curricula. One of the most interesting things is that come October 13, the children of the Chicago Public School will have a day free from school. It's Columbus' birthday. They are still giving children a holiday to celebrate Columbus's birthday.
I don't think they teach Columbus.
Yeah.
Because if they taught Christopher Columbus,
Exactly.
they would question whether or not that's a holiday they should celebrate.
But that's what I mean. You could imagine that if you have schools in native children are going there, you are celebrating somebody that they regard as a pirate, a murderer,
a terrorist.
A terrorist.
If they had the word, that's what they would have called.
And the same thing, if you look at the curricula with respect to black children too, you will see the same thing. You have a de-emphasis on the experience of slavery, the post-slavery experiences of black people, which is still continuing. Those things
I don't call it post.
Yeah, well,
I
it's no
never
post.
used the word
no,
post.
You're right. There's nothing post about it. It's just that a different day. It's 10, 100 years or 200 years after.
Right.
But still the same thing. But
right.
So
how do you call something after that continues? It has to be, it's only after when it's after.
Yeah.
When it ends, then it's after.
It's at a different date. It's the same thing at a different time. It's a little older.
Right.
But the same kind of challenges. We have to have schools that address the concerns of the neighborhoods in which they...
Failing that, we have to address the concerns of the neighborhood ourselves.
Yes.
And we always have needed to supplement. We've always needed to supplement what other people do. You don't fail your own responsibility because there's someone else who is taking on that responsibility. Because if you have a particular goal in mind, which is to teach your children the essential things in life, then you don't guess that they're learning these things.
Oh, you're right.
You see to it that they're learning these things. Right. I remember, I'm trying to think of what it was, that my grandchildren were going to, they were maybe going into 3rd or 4th grade. And I found out that one of them did not know measurements, weight measurements, did not know how many ounces were in a pound, how many ounces were in a gallon or a quart. You know, things like this that you just think, you know, you just learn this. No, these things were not being learned. No quantities, no measurements had been learned. Well, now, what am I going to say? You know, at that school, they didn't do. No, what you're going to do is you're going to see to it that that child learns. It's better for the child to have learned it at the time that it should have been learned, because it's always easier to teach the child when the child is receptive to this learning, the teachable moment, as they call it. But in any case, when you discover, you ask questions of your children. You have them come before you and talk to you about things that they know. And when you find out that there are big gaps in the things that they know, then you know that there's some work for you to do.
Yes, yes, you're quite right.
But you can't
You're
do
quite
it if
right.
you're not
You're
in
quite right.
communication with your
No,
children.
you're quite right. Because ultimately, it all ends with self-responsibility. We have to be, we have to be self-responsible. We have to,
Right.
And when more people are like that, then you will get the community schools that we are of our dream.
Right.
You will get the community school because as more people become self-responsible and caring about these issues that you just raised, then you eventually get a critical mass that is now questioning the curricula in the school and asking questions of the...
Or open up, if the children bring textbooks home, open up the textbook.
Yeah.
See what the chapters are. See what this is being taught. I learned that my great-grandson had become very interested in the Civil War. And he, in fact, did a little presentation about the Civil War. And my goodness gracious, his information was so flawed. But it wasn't his fault. He had learned quite well what he had been taught. And he was regurgitating what he had been taught.
Exactly.
And relying on what he had been taught. All he needed to do was to remember who these characters, the cast of characters, the dates and events, and he was quite pleased with that. Well, I decided that he needed to be congratulated for being so diligent in studying his lesson and learning the lesson. But I also decided that he needed to know the thing he was trying to know. So there's a book called Don't Know Much About the Civil War, which is interesting reading. And I gave it to his father. And I said, now you need to read this book with your son so that he can learn that, this book just takes apart a lot of the misinformation and disinformation that is given.
Yeah.
And so, and it's far more interesting. It's a much more interesting way to learn about something, and, forget about talking about the Civil War as something about these people disagreed over whether there should be slavery or not. No, they disagreed on how best to profit from this labor that was unreimbursed, and it was, there were not a right side and a wrong side. They were in a struggle to produce justice or truth. So the thing is, our children are being...
Yeah, but you see now, that's exactly my point about the curricula.
Right.
We have to, you cannot you cannot abandon our children. Even if they spend time in those places, we can abandon them to the education that we have now.
Right.
Because as you said, as Carter J. Woodson rightfully called it, it's miseducation, it's missed education.
Right. There's no education.
No. And nothing is more important than what you have in your mind.
Right.
And if you allow that mind to be, people to deposit their erroneous notions of reality, at least it's not debated, they're not out there saying, this is what we think, what do you think?
Right.
Aha. Then when you have that kind of dialogue, what do you think? Oh, this is what we think. Maybe we will not agree at a consensus.
Right.
But each one is free to at least educate to his children to understand their perspective.
Right. Right.
But what you have now is a dominant curriculum, a dominant narrative, a single narrative, as a Nigerian novelist, Chidinma Adichie. I'm going to send you a book.
I'm glad.
Yes.
You didn't bring your book with you.
Oh, no, I didn't bring.
Well, we only have 5 minutes.
Yes.
Tell the people what book you've written.
Yes, I have written a book. The title of it is Life is God. Not good, Life is God. And you can get it on Amazon. The subtitle is Notes on the Psychology of Human Adjustment.
Well, I'm so happy that you came, and I have about 3 minutes, and I think I will just give them to you so that you can do whatever closing statement you would like to make.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, we've been colleagues.
Yes, yes. And we've been doing this. We've been talking like this.
Yes, we have.
Since we
down through the
always
years.
wanted to make society a little better.
Right.
And we've been part of the struggle, if you like.
Right. Was biology originally your
yes, it was.
Your
it was.
profession,
It was,
and then
it was biology.
you went to psychology.
I went
from
to
that.
psychology.
Why?
Well, I was thinking of med school. You know, when we come from Africa, where everybody's going to med school, but I found nothing that I really just wanted to read.
Okay.
To read widely, anything I wanted to read. Okay. And psychology seemed interesting.
All right.
Only for me to find again at the heart of it is a very mechanical view of the universe. So it never really satisfied me. And I didn't begin to get a real good education until I went back to Africa and started really looking at African customs and traditions.
And looking at African psychology.
Yes, that's when I really finally would think that I got educated.
Okay.
Indeed, after, I think education is a very serious business because it can be iatrogenic. It can really make you sick because when you have that kind of poisonous pedagogy in your head,
right.
it will affect you.
Right.
So my return to...
So it's corruption.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it's poison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody used to say, somebody's quoted as saying, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, but a little miseducation is devastating.
It's lethal.
You know, because you are ignorant, but you think you know something, and what you know is not so, and what you know is not serviceable. So the important thing is the community must take a hand.
Yes.
Families must take a hand. Families must supplement where they can. They must do more to see that their children are learning the kinds of things that they need to learn, that they are developing into whole human beings that we can be proud to call brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers.
Very well, yes.
Well, I'm so happy to have had you, Olasupo Laosebikan.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's a pleasure. It's
All
my
right.
pleasure, really.
Yes. Well, I'll see you sometime again, I'm sure, on this program.
Yes.
And you keep doing the good work you're doing out there at
you.
Chicago State University, teaching your psychology classes.
It's been fun. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I think we have done our
share one mind through a vision of our